sometimes we find ourselves combining the distance formula and the midpoint formula. Let's take a look at how that can happen. We have these instructions. Find the center and radius of the circle with endpoints of a diameter of -411 and 5,1. So we've got a picture here, and you see the points graphed. So we've got the point 5,1 here, and then we've got the point -411, and they are endpoints of a diameter. So let's sketch in. Well, let's talk about some formulas that we're going to use, our distance and midpoint formula. Think about the things we've got to do. We've got two things to do. We've got to find the center of the circle and the radius. So kind of be thinking about which formula is going to help us do what. Here we see the diameter actually sketched in. Now the diameter of the circle goes all the way across the circle through the center. That's the definition of the diameter. So where is the, let's take a look at what the actual circle looks like. There's the circle that would have that diameter and have these endpoints. Certainly that's not the only diameter, there's infinitely many, but this is the one that we're looking at. So let's turn our attention to our goals. We want to find the center of the circle, we want to find the radius. Let's start with the center. Well, center brings to mind midpoint, right? So the center of the circle will be the midpoint of this diameter. Let's use our trusty midpoint formula. The midpoint will be equal to, we want to add the x's and divide by 2, so -4 plus 5, those are the x values of our ordered pair, and then we want to add the y values and divide those by 2, 11 plus 1 divided by 2. That gives us the midpoint of 1/2, 12 halves, but 12 halves is the same as 6. So we have a midpoint at 1/2 6. That means the center of our circle is located at 1/2 6. And I think it's great to just notice, does that make sense? Does that visibly look correct? And it sure does. Now we want to find the radius of this circle. The definition of the radius of a circle is the distance from the center to any point on the outside of the circle. So the diameter goes all the way across. The radius goes from the center to any point on the outside. Well, for convenience, we've got 2 points on the outside. So we want to go from our center to one of those points. Now what I've done is I've chosen the point here. You see I've got here in blue the point 5,1. The reason I chose that ordered pair is it's all positive. Anytime you introduce negatives in, I find that I have a tendency to make more mistakes. You certainly could use the point -411, but for this demonstration we're going to use the point 5,1. Well, the radius is a length. That means we are using the distance formula. So the distance will be equal to the square root of. So we're using the point 1/2 6, and the other point that we're going to use is the point 5,1. We could choose either one of these, and we have chosen this one. All right. So the formula says subtract the x's. So 5 minus 1/2, that quantity squared, plus 1 minus 6, that quantity squared. And now it's time to simplify and find our answer. So 5 minus 1/2 is 4 1/2, which is the same as 9 halves squared. 1 minus 6 is -5, and we'll be squaring that also. We get the square root of 81/4. When we're squaring a fraction, we square the numerator and the denominator because it's like 9 halves times 9 halves, plus 25. Well, 81/4 plus 25 is 181/4. Let your calculator do that, or get a common denominator, or however you want to go with that. And we want to simplify that. We want to take the square root of the numerator divided by the square root of the denominator. So the square root of 181, it doesn't simplify, so we'll just leave it like that. The square root of 4 is 2. So the radius of this circle is the square root of 181 divided by 2. Now, I don't know about you, but if somebody said, hey, how about walking the square root of 181 divided by 2 feet? I don't know what that is. So sometimes it's nice to just have a decimal for understanding of what that is. That's about 6.7. So our radius of our circle is square root of 181 divided by 2, about 6.7.